I love the Eastern Roman Empire. More commonly known as the Byzantine Empire, it was a wonder that stood for almost 1,000 years after the Western Roman Empire fell. With its prosperous and impregnable capital, Constantinople, being the most splendid city in medieval Europe. The people of the empire never doubted their identity. They were Romans, just living in the eastern provinces. It's the scholars who refer to them as Byzantines to distinguish them from the early pagan and Latin-speaking Romans living in the west. But why the word Byzantine? That's because the original city which Constantinople was built upon was a Greek settlement named Byzantium. And the story of Byzantium, before Constantine the Great made it the new capital of the Roman Empire in 330 AD, is what we will dive into today. There is something incredibly poetic about the two capitals of the Roman Empire. Rome in the west was founded by Romulus and lost by another Romulus, Romulus Augustulus. Meanwhile in the east, Constantinople was founded by Constantine the Great and lost by another Constantine, Constantine Palaeologos. The entire history of Rome is closely linked with the fate of these two cities, which is why I'm dedicating a video to the founding of the city that will become Constantinople, the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire. Perhaps it might give you some insight on why the city was so strategically important and crucial to the survival of the Roman Empire even after the fall of the West. This is the first video in a series I plan on making about the story of the Eastern Roman Empire, summarizing each period of its history in hopefully less than 15 minutes. Please note that this is a project purely for fun. I will not be diving in super deep for each video, as that would require a monstrous amount of research and too much time. So, let's get started. We know that Byzantium was settled by Greek colonists from the city-state of Megara by 657 BC, but its founding is only the stuff of legends. The most famous one is that Byzas, son of King Nisos of Megara, was sent to find a new Megarian colony. His father, the king, consulted with the Oracle of Delphi and told him to build a city opposite the land of the blind. This was a very typical prophecy from the oracle that could be interpreted in so many ways. But Byzas, upon arriving at where the Sea of Marmara meets the Bosphorus, took one look at the colony of Chalcedon and decided that this is the land of the blind. For the Chalcedonians were blind and did not take advantage of the unique geography of this area. Byzas then ingeniously built his city on the European shore of the south end of the Bosphorus, where it would be well defended and control the entrance to both the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara. This city would be known as Byzantium, Latinized as Byzantium, after the founder Byzas. In other versions of the myth, Byzas was the son of Poseidon and Charissa. Byzas named the Golden Horn, the inlet that separates the European-Asian side of Byzantium, after his mother, whose name means the Horn. The immense strategic importance of the site of Byzantium would be a huge reason why Constantine chose it as his new capital city. This strategic importance was also noted by the Achaemenid Persians. King Darius I subdued the city in 513 BC during his Scythian campaign, which then became an important port for the Persians. The Byzantines rebelled several times, but were not very successful until the Greeks finally regained control of the city in 439 BC. Then came the infamous 30-year conflict, where Sparta and Athens fight for dominion over the Hellenic world. Yes, the Peloponnesian War. Byzantium was made part of Athens' Delian League to provide it with grain shipments from the Black Sea. Thus, the Spartans really wanted to take the city, and Byzantium became a hot point of conflict, especially in the later years of the war. Between 411 and 405 BC, the city switched sides back and forth until the Spartan Lysander finally got the city for good and cut off Athens' grain supply, ending the war a year later in 404 BC. The Byzantines enjoyed a relative period of calm after the whole ordeal, until Philip II of Macedon besieged their city in 340 BC unsuccessfully. It is said that the Byzantines attributed the failure of the siege to divine intervention by Hecate, the goddess associated with dogs and magic. they started using her star and crescent motif as the symbol of the city. The story goes that Philip attempted a surprise attack on a dark night, but the sudden appearance of bright light thwarted their attempt and the Byzantines repelled them. Philip's son, however, the military genius Alexander the Great, succeeded where his father failed and annexed Byzantium, who regained independence shortly after his untimely death. The Byzantines then had to endure another threat, a Gallic invasion, in 279 BC. They paid yearly tribute to the Gauls until the latter was beaten by the Thracians. To meet the tribute sum, they exerted more control over trade through the Bosphorus, but that led to a war against the island of Rhodes in 220 BC. The war was settled with Byzantium agreeing to reduce its harsh policies. Soon Byzantium, like the rest of the Hellenic world, would be conquered by the Roman Republic. Byzantium was bequeathed to the Romans as a part of the Kingdom of Bithynia by its last king, Nicomedes IV, in 74 BC. Even as a Roman city, Byzantium remained fairly independent, maintaining its status as the important linking city of Europe and Asia, and being a source of profit for Rome. In 192 AD, one of the more memorable events that took place in Byzantium during the Roman period happened. Byzantium was besieged by Septimius Severus. Why? In short, the assassination of Emperor Commodus that year led to a civil war between the Roman generals Septimius Severus, Claudius Albinus, and Piscinius Niger. The Byzantines backed Piscinius and withstood the siege for 3 years until they finally gave out. In 195, Septimius was so annoyed at the city, he sacked it to the ground. Byzantium was so desolated that the historian Cassius Dio said you'd think the city was taken by barbarians, not Romans. Septimius would come to regret his decision and, persuaded by his son Caracalla, rebuilt the city. Again, we see the strategic superiority of Byzantium. Its ability to withstand the siege for 3 years was quite impressive. As there is not much to say on this city during the 3rd century, while the Roman Empire was falling into crisis, and this is where we will stop with the historical narrative today. I'd like to end the video with a brief summary of what ancient Byzantium was like. Although the city was regarded as an island of Hellenic civilization, it was, as depicted in Menander's play, The Flute Girl, a raucous port city full of drunkards and dishonest people. Perhaps this description was due to the playwright's jealousy of the city's prosperity. It is still important to note that the city, even after being christened as Constantinople, would always have a rowdy and active population, so the idea of Byzantium being a rather chaotic settlement is not that far-fetched. Next time, we will summarize Constantine's rise to power and his plans for Byzantium. See you soon. If you enjoyed the video, have questions, or would like to correct a mistake I made somewhere, feel free to leave a comment. Also, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you.